please click OK.
Okay, continue.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning and good evening to those from different parts of the world. The Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, the Rector of the International Islamic University, Malaysia, Your Excellency Kamala Shirin Lakhdar, the United States Ambassador of Malaysia, the Honorable Deputy Commissioner of Police, Norma Ishaq, the Principal Assistant Director of the Bukit Aman Special Branches Counter-Terrorism Division E8, the Malaysian Royal Police. Associate Professor Dr. Daniel Muhammad Yusuf, the Deputy Dean of Academic and Research, ISTAC IIUM. Dr. Amy Pate, the Executive and Research Director of the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Response to Terrorism, University of Maryland. Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, and speakers from across the globe, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a true pleasure and honor for me to welcome you to this opening ceremony of the high-level kickoff of the first International Symposium on Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism in Malaysia and Southeast Asia, the ICVE 2021. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the organizers to congratulate both our host, the ISTAC IIUM, and the START for hosting this event. Despite the most turbulent times for everyone during this pandemic, certainly this symposium brings together policymakers, experts, and scholars, provides an excellent opportunity to discuss emerging issues in preventing and countering violent extremism within the region. Through this symposium, we would like to engage with all of you in an open and constructive dialogue about the relevant themes in counter violent extremism, and we hope that all of you would benefit from exchanging ideas, other than sharing your invaluable insight from your expertise. I would like to inform you that this symposium will be held for 2 weeks, starting from today until the 27th of January 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin our session, I would like to invite Brother Hilal Azman for reciting dua.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Al-Fatihah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Arrahmanirrahim. Maliki yaumiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma inna na'udzubika min an nushrika bika syai'an na'lamuhu wa nastaghfiruka lima la na'lamuh. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. All praise is due to the Almighty Allah, the cherisher, the sustainer of the world. May the peace and the mercy of Allah be upon His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, companions, and followers. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, all praise is due to Almighty Allah, the cherisher, the sustainer of the world. May the peace and the mercy of Allah be upon His Prophet Muhammad, his family, companion, and followers. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. We seek refuge in Allah the Almighty from the evil of our souls and our sinful deeds. Ya Allah, you have already given us of the kingdom and taught us the interpretation of the narrative, originator of the heavens and the earth. You are our protector in this world and the hereafter. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Forgive us what we have done in the past and what we will do in the future, and what we have concealed and what we have done openly, and what we have exceeded in every single part of our undertakings. You are the bringer forward, you are the delayer. There is no true God except you. Allahumma ya zalmani wa la yamunnu alayna. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Allahumma ya Hannan, Ya Mannan, Ya Sultan. Let our efforts succeed well and secure success. Make us fulfill our determination, give answer to our prayers, listen to our requests, causes us to obtain the good of this world and the hereafter. give us much and more than our expectation. Ya Allah, cleanse our hearts, unburden our emotion from hate and anger, and the event of dispute in the matter of truth. Show us the right path, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, shower upon us with happiness as our final end, and fulfill our hopes beyond expectation. Join with well-being and good health our early mornings and dusky evenings. Set your mercy as our final end and outcome. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, you are the one exalted in power and one full of knowledge, between the good and the evil, between the obvious and the unseen. Protect us from calamity and danger, from disturbance and strife. Grant us our prayers, guide us to righteousness and to the path of you blessed. Provide us with the people that are sincere, trustworthy, noble, and honest, responsible in building a developed nation, building a united people. Ya Allah, we forever seek your blessing. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, make us speak with guidance, inspire us with pity, give us success for that which is most pleasure, and employ us in what is most pleasing to you. Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram, make us enjoy moderation, place us among the people of right behavior, guide us to right conduct and the righteous servants. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Hilal. Jazakallah khairan. Without a further ado, I would like to welcome the Honorable Professor Emeritus Tansri Datu Zulkifli Abdul Razak to continue for his welcoming remark. You're welcome.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Greeting of peace, Excellency Kamala Shin Kadir, you as the ambassador to Malaysia, colleagues, brothers and sisters. Let me first of all thank you for giving me this opportunity to welcome you to this very auspicious occasion in a time that I think it is very fitting for us to discuss a topic of this nature. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you, and particularly to the ambassador for willing and agreeing to officiate this international symposium on preventing and countering violent extremism in Malaysia and Southeast Asia, otherwise known as ICVE 2021. Thank you, Your Excellency, for this. And tonight, we are indeed very fortunate to welcome a number of distinguished speakers to talk about the effort that we have been trying to do to encounter violence, extremism, and the symposium panelists, discussion, workshop facilitators, moderators, and all who have contributed in one way or another to make this symposium a successful one. I'm told it is supposed to be held last year, around March 2020, but all of us know MCO came in just in time, and we are now having to postpone this. It's almost like a full circle. Now we are back to the MCO. Plus with an emergency to boot at the same time. So I'm not too sure whether this is a good opportunity to discuss it, but certainly I'm told that this is going to be a session that all of us are looking forward to for the next 7 days from tonight until the 27th of January. Although this is not ideal for networking as such, but developing collaboration in whatever form, I think is something that we welcome, and we hope this existing relationship between us and the company that we have developed so far will bring us into a kind of a new understanding of what aggression is in the context perhaps of the new normal. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellency, please allow me for a moment to contextualize this particular project in IIUM's overall schedule of things. When we started in 2019, IIUM launched a series of flagship programs intended to bring what is of concern to IIUM. And one of these, I think, based on a platform on Islamization, sustainable development, and also Maqasid al-Sharia. ICVE 21, therefore, is a milestone for us in the event of building peace, civilizational development flagship program for the year 2020 and going on to 2021, and I hope more for the year to come. We have contextualized this in what we call 2Lead for Peace and its relationship with START University of Maryland. Thank you for this. At the point of inception in the year 2018, the project was centered on locally based researchers and practitioners from ISTEC, IIUM, USM, and UMS, as well as other organizations at the same time. It gradually, alhamdulillah, expanded with a focus on capacity building for PCVE, preventing, countering violent extremism, building the collaborative research and activities with researchers from START University of Maryland in the year 2019. In relation to the flagship, a new research unit called Extremism Analytical Research Unit was also established, and 3 affiliates of this unit completed a 6-week training stint at the University of Maryland on profiling, geospatial, and stimulation instruments at the same time that year. Furthermore, collaborative research grants on the study of Sabah borders, effective PCVE narrative for Malaysian youth, the Malaysian use of social media, also were acquired in the year 2020 and be completed this year due to the delay caused by the pandemic. Apart from the research to lead for peace, we also extensively involved in a peace education and engagement activities with Malaysian societies and youth, working with the likes of the Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Youth and Sport, and Allied Coordinating Committee of Islamic NGOs, or ICCIN. These activities will also involve expertise and involvement, for example, from the Royal Malaysian Police, Southeast Asia Regional Center for Counter-Terrorism, at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other public agency, civil society groups, researchers, and academics. Alhamdulillah, the effort made by 2Lead for Peace has been acknowledged. If I may inform you, IIUM was declared the Regional Centers of Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development by the United Nations Universities in New York last April 2020. RCE, at its core, is a network of cooperation between individuals, communities, experts, and organizations committed to build a sustainable future through education. The global RCE network, which is placed in Tokyo, in its portal December 2020, announced an award for innovative projects on education for sustainable development, thus serve a link among the local communities. 2Lead for Peace was announced as one of the 8 prize project winners for IIUM, and 2Lead for Peace has also earlier received an award for the overall flagship winners in the year 2020 for IIUM Quality Days. And hence, I think there's a bright future for us to move forward together in bringing peace to the world. While such acknowledgements are appreciated and moral boosting, there are more important things to do for us to serve as an impetus for the future contribution to nation building and peace. In this regard, I am very delighted to see a couple of exciting involvement in the horizon of 2021. Firstly, a web portal for PCVE, Counter-Terrorism and Peace, to be co-developed between MPI, which is Malaysian Press Institute, in University Science Malaysia, and also the Southeast Asia Regional Centers. And secondly is a co-development of the National Action Program for PCVE as consultant to the Ministry of Home Affairs and also UITM. With regard to these achievements and ongoing development, I must also emphasize my heartfelt thanks to the continuous support of the US Embassy in Kuala Lumpur, and my ardent wish that the fruitful collaboration generated between START and Maryland continues well into the future. On that note, Excellency, we also want to acknowledge another program called READ that was done very successfully among us with, I think, more than 40 schools, local schools, to create leadership. And I think this was also successfully accomplished last year. and we hope we can continue this collaboration with you in the near future. Your support, your dedication and collaboration certainly is an important dynamic for the success of the project. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, to end, I pray that for the success of this symposium, virtual or otherwise, and look forward to the publication of outputs for the future benefit of all stakeholders, certainly for IIUM. Without further delay, I would now like to make way for the ambassador to give his officiating speech so that we can start with the discussion. And on that note, I thank you once again and bid you farewell and hope you have a fruitful deliberation from now on, inshallah. So, wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a greeting of peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Tan Sri Dato' Zulkifli Abdul Razak, for your welcoming remarks and for your guidance and leadership in IIUM and highlighting all the contributions that IIUM is taking to make sure that there will be a positive change within Malaysia as well as within the region. Next, I would like to welcome Your Excellency, the Ambassador Kamala Sherin Lakdar, to officiate this symposium. Your Excellency, the table is yours.
Thank you very much. And this is a wonderful event for me to participate in because we have been working so long all together, so many participants. And so it is amazing for me to be here participating. And it was really wonderful to hear Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Zulkifli, the rector of IIUM, open the symposium. I'm really happy also that Dr. Daniel Youssef is with us as head of the Extremism and Analytical Unit, Peace and Security Studies. And of course, most close to our heart is Amy Pate, who is Executive and Research Director at START at the University of Maryland. So is a very important part of the work we've done together and continue to do. I'm also very, very happy to welcome all the presenters and delegates from Malaysia and across the globe who are taking the time to contribute to and attend this symposium. I believe that the strong network that will be built during the symposium, even though it's virtual, will be building blocks for active future collaboration in combating extremist ideologies. And this symposium is strong because of the people who are participating and what they will take away from it. So I'm really pleased that so many are able to join. The United States and Malaysia share a common goal in promoting peaceful coexistence and countering the spread of all types of hateful ideology that promote violence and conflict. It is in this effort we helped facilitate a partnership between two great universities, IIUM and the University of Maryland, to share their expertise with one another and collaborate on joint research projects. As part of the collaboration, 3 PhD graduate candidates from IIUM were hosted by the University of Maryland's National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, the START program. The student scholars spent 6 weeks working together with the world's leading experts, devising new approaches and techniques based on tools developed by the University of Maryland, enabling the Malaysian researchers to add to our collective knowledge about violent extremism in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. I'm very happy to say that the 3 researchers will be presenting their findings at this symposium. We will also have representatives from the Department of State, Office of Countering Violent Extremism, to discuss US efforts in countering violent extremism in Southeast Asia, something that we have been working on for a long time. The United States values the important role that civil society plays on preventing and countering violent extremism. We try to promote a comprehensive approach that involves non-governmental organizations and academics in order to effectively address the full cycle of radicalization and understand its drivers. I am pleased to see representatives from 14 countries participating in the symposium. This is a great opportunity to openly discuss challenges as well as successful approaches. As more and more communities face growing threats from violence motivated by extremism, as well as increasing intolerance toward people from different cultural, ethnic, national, and religious backgrounds, it is more important than ever to confront these challenges cooperatively and comprehensively. I also deeply believe that our work collectively has to be based on data and research. In this area, it is very common for us to hold opinions and ideas that we bring from our own experience or our background. But truly, we need more information and data, more research on what radicalizes young people and what causes ideological conflicts and violence. So I'm really proud that IIUM and Maryland were brought together and that many other civil society academics in this symposium will share their knowledge so that we can more effectively combat these issues. I'd really like to also say on behalf of the US Embassy team, I would like to congratulate and thank all of you for being part of this event. And I really appreciate your efforts in creating a stronger and safer society in Malaysia and throughout the world. I really thank my colleagues at the embassy for supporting this for many years, for working on this collaboration, and I look forward with them to continuing our work together and further enhancing our genuine collaboration and supporting the work of all our wonderful partners at IIUM and the University of Maryland. Thank you all very much, and I wish you a very successful symposium. May it be the start of something really important for all of us and the societies we live in. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much for your valuable insight, Your Excellencies, and for your great contribution. And as what you've highlighted, it's very important to have cooperation, and you being with us today means a lot. This symposium will not be possible without the hard work, commitment, and dedication from both hosts, the ISTAC IIUM and the START. Therefore, I would like to invite both our principal investigators, Dr. Daniel Muhammad Yusuf, who is also my lecturer, and then followed by Dr. Amy Pei to deliver their speech on the project overview in order to materialize and execute this long-standing research collaboration. Dr. Daniel, table is yours.
Okay, thank you, Sukaina. Your Excellency, Tan Sri Professor Zul, just allow me to share some slides with you. Okay, it's not been enabled. Okay, never mind, I'll forfeit the slides in relation to the project overview. What I wanted to share with you tonight was, I think, basically the importance of, or the value and merit of collaboration. As our rector mentioned earlier, the research team that started out on this project in 2018 was relatively small. It was made up of researchers from IIUM, USM, as well as UMS, and also Mercy Malaysia. But I would dare to say that the catalyst for its growth had been the collaboration that was initiated with START as a result of course, the US Embassy in KL basically introducing us to each other. And this was basically the start of, so far, what had been an extremely fruitful relationship in terms of networking as well as capacity building. As far as our collaboration with START, it began at the end of 2018 as a kickoff seminar and workshop whereby Amy, Barnett, and Devin, I believe, came to offer their insight as well as share their expertise in relation to developments in CVE in the US, in North America, and how that may be helpful to Southeast Asia. And after that, there were a series of follow-up workshops. Marcus Boyd came to share his experience in relation to spatial analysis. Marcus Jensen with regards to profiling. And then we began to deliberate on the symposium format afterwards. By July to August, that was the 6 weeks in which 3 of our student scholars went to the States to expose themselves to spatial analysis, to profiling, as well as simulation called ICONS. And they will be presenting their experiences in the US as part of the symposium seminar in the next couple of days. Of course, what I wanted to say was that, as I mentioned earlier, it became the catalyst for a series of engagement that we started to have with various parties. I think over the past 2 years, we began to initiate and engage as well as collaborate with almost all of the players of PCVE in Malaysia. And some of the highlights I could mention is our organization of a youth empowerment program against violent extremism. This was something that was organized together with the Ministry of Youth and Sports and various agencies, including PDRM or the Royal Malaysian Police, Prisons Department, Siasat, and so on. And also we are now starting to engage with the Ministry of Home Affairs, with the Institute of Public Security of Malaysia in relation to the National Action Plan for Malaysia with regards to PCVE. So what I can say is that all of this occurred because of the value of collaboration. The collaboration with START led us to be more visible, and as a result, I think it opened up avenues that I couldn't have imagined at the beginning of the research group in 2018. So I would really extend my thanks to Amy, to Barnett, and the team at START. There were a few projects that actually fell through because of COVID-19. We were supposed to have, I think, exchange students on the undergraduate side to Gombak. So that didn't work out because of COVID and I think original MCO last year in March. So I hope things improve over the course of the year as soon as the vaccine, I think, picks up in majority of the countries, and some sort of normalization can be had in relation to our research activities and ongoing collaboration. I'm also happy to say that we are going for grants together. I'm discussing with Barnett, for example, in relation to a potential project in Indonesia. That would mean that we will be expanding our collaboration with Indonesian counterparts as well. So as far as I think our participants in this symposium is concerned, so I hope this can be, I think, an example of how working together is something which is necessary, especially in relation to nation building, to peace building, and countering violent extremism. Is something that can't be done alone. And I think our collaboration with START is something that can serve as an example on how to do research collaboration as well as networking going to the future. Okay, I think I'll stop here and give some space for Amy to explain herself. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daniel. And I would like to call Dr. Amy Pate on behalf of the START to share with us the project overview of this research collaboration.
Thank you,
Dr.
Samira.
Amy.
Thank you. So it was about March 2018, I think, so almost 3 years ago, when I had initial phone call with Dr. Daniel to sort of start scoping and thinking through about how we wanted to build a program of collaboration and capacity building. And little did I know how well it was going to go and how strong the partnership was going to develop. So I would like to say a string of thank yous. First, the U.S. Embassy KL, Bradley Hurst, Morgan O'Brien, and Riyaz Sadayan, who have been so supportive and such good advocates for this partnership, for investing in this relationship that we are building. And so thank you for that, and also for working with us to reshape and rethink this culminating symposium in the light of a global pandemic. While I deeply regret not being able to travel to Malaysia and see all of my friends and colleagues in person and have, you know, all of those side conversations that happen at conferences, I am very thankful that we have been able to move the event online. And hopefully maybe some people who would not have been able to travel will be able to participate and benefit from this new format. I also would like to thank Dr. Daniel, his team of researchers, and also his support staff who have worked with us to make this program successful and this collaboration successful, and working with us to continue the collaboration and partnership into the future through seeking funding and other activities that we can work on together. So I deeply appreciate their partnership and also their friendship as we work to expand understanding in this very important topic area of preventing and countering violent extremism. So thank you, Dr. Daniel, for all of your partnership. And then the team at START, my co-PI, Barnett Coven, and then the research leads and their teams who have worked with the ISTAC researchers, Dr. Michael Jensen, Dr. Marcus Boyd, and Devin Ellis. START's founding director, Gary Lafree, used to say, one of the things that we have found about terrorist organizations in our research is that those terrorist organizations that are highly networked last the longest and are the most successful. And he liked to say it was the same thing for those of us who are researching terrorism and ways to prevent and counter it, that it takes those of us who are networked and working together are setting ourselves up for success and for being able to make an impact on our communities and our societies in the world to prevent and counter violent extremism. And so again, I would just like to thank the U.S. Embassy and all of our partners for helping us be that networked set of researchers, practitioners, policymakers working in this area that has a partnership that this is the culminating event of the initial award, the initial funding that's sort of kicked off this partnership. But as several have mentioned, we have many other initiatives either ongoing or in the planning stages. So I look forward to continuing to work with ISTAC and IIUM for years to come. So again, thank you. Welcome to our panelists, our participants, our honored guest. I sincerely hope that you will find the next 2 weeks almost of events, workshops, panels, et cetera, to be beneficial and useful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Emmy, and we hope to see you in IIUM soon. Now we move to the panel session under the title, Malaysia and the US Efforts to Counter Violent Extremism. We would be having with us today the Deputy Commissioner Police, Norma Ishaq, the Principal Assistant Director of Bukit Aman Special Branch, together with Barbara Baluti Senior, Advisor on CVE, and as well as with Dr. Ahmed Al-Muhammadi from CFS IIUM, as well as a counter-terrorist analyst. Now we move on to the panel discussion, and it will be chaired by Dr. Danielle.
Okay, thank you very much, Sukaina. Azan. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much again, Sukaina, Your Excellency, Professor Zul, dear panelists and fellow participants of the symposium. I will be moderating the special panel for tonight. We have, as Sukaina mentioned today, DCP Norma Ishak, Principal Assistant Director of the Bukit Aman Special Branch on Counterterrorism Division, more known as E8. Yeah? We also have Barbara Pauletti, CVE Advisor, Bureau of Countering Violent Extremism, as well as Dr. Ahmad El Mohammadi, CFS IUM, as well as Counterterrorism Analyst. I will be introducing them a bit more extensively as we begin to hear from them in relation to their views on Malaysia and US efforts in countering violent extremism. But just let me set the stage before that in relation to the special panel. I think what can be extracted from both Malaysia and US experiences in CVE, as well as counterterrorism, is the issue of security and resilience, balancing the two. And allow me to read, I think, Malaysia and US context in relation to this. Let's look at Malaysia. There was a paper, or there's a paper that will be published soon in relation to Malaysia and the COVID-19 situation and how it has impacted on the CVE sector in the country. Based on this paper, it mentions 3 points. First, the recent changes in Malaysian politics have not necessarily affected counter-terrorism and CVE activities. Thanks to the commitment of government servants, international organizations, and civil societies for keeping the momentum going. Second, the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic did not stop recruitment attempts and radicalization in Malaysia. Third, regional factors are vital for Malaysia's national security. By interlacing these points, the resilience of the state and society via political stability, engagement and collaboration of stakeholders, and comprehension of the evolving dynamic of global, regional and local VE is necessary for a sustainable security and public safety and nation building agenda of the country. So again here, the emphasis on resilience. And if we look at the US, yeah, in a CVE conference in 2019 in Australia, a speaker mentioned about the transition in CVE and counterterrorism since September 11 on risk perception, risk tolerance, and policy formation. The narrative of PCVE and counterterrorism from never again to the sharing of risk between state and civil society to harness community and learning to apply policy from other means that PCVE is present, focusing on resilience development. The necessary evolution of this narrative from security to resilience development was in part due to certain drivers. Number one, impatience and securitization as an immediate response to the 9/11 tragedy, shifting in time with the development of the scope and knowledge of PCVE and the sharing of risk between state and society. Number two, going beyond the cost and counterproductiveness of securitization. $1 trillion was spent in expenditure for counterterrorism over the past 18 years. This was in 2019, of course. And number three, of course, concerns over civil liberties started to develop as well. Number four, the rise and fall of ISIS and the ideological latency of religious extremism. And number five, presently, the radicalization of identity politics, of course, including far-right extremism. So these are the two contexts with regards to Malaysia and the United States of America in relation to CVE and CT to a certain extent. And I believe that our three speakers for today's panel have prepared some of their, I think, initial remarks, after which it will be followed by a question and answer session. Okay, now let's go to the first speaker. Before that, let me introduce her. She is Barbara Pauletti. Barbara Pauletti is a Foreign Affairs Officer in the Bureau of Counterterrorism and Countering Violent Extremism at the US Department of State, with approximately 14 years of experience on issues related to good governance. In the CVE office, her portfolio focuses primarily on developing and influencing counterterrorism policy for Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. Prior to joining the CVE office in 2017, Barbara served as team lead in the US Department of State's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor's Global Programming Office, and as a policy advisor in the Bureau of International Organizational Affairs, Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs Office. In both bureaus, Barbara advised on good governance, human rights, and corporate social responsibility. Prior to joining the State Department, Barbara worked for 6 years as a human rights officer at the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and practiced international law with a focus on international trade at Calais Lewin. Barbara holds a JD from George Washington University Law School, a Master of Science in Political Theory from LSE, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in International Affairs and Spanish from James Madison University. So without further ado, I would invite now Barbara to deliver her remarks.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Good morning to everyone, and also, I guess, good evening. I'd like to thank the University of Maryland and IIUM for convening this panel today, and for this opportunity to speak here today as well. We've come a long way in our understanding of how to effectively prevent and counter terrorism. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about how the United States' strategy for fighting terrorism supports countering violent extremism, or CVE, as we've been saying, both globally and in Southeast Asia. The terrorist threat is more complex than ever before. There are over 120 Islamist terrorist groups operating around the world, including ISIS and a resurgent Al-Qaeda. We're seeing the rise of more interconnected ethno-nationalist, anti-Muslim, and anti-Semitic terrorist acts. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and their affiliates have become more dispersed, using online safe havens to inspire attacks by distant followers. They've made themselves even less susceptible to conventional military or law enforcement action. Terrorist organizations with long histories in Southeast Asia have also pledged support for ISIS. The terrorist threat is evolving, as we all know. It is vital that we continue sharing this information amongst ourselves, between governments, NGOs, and communities, and researchers and think tanks, and that we work together collectively to prevent terrorist radicalization and recruitment. We are working internationally to contribute to a whole of society counterterrorism approach that addresses the life cycle of radicalization, and this includes prevention. We define prevention as the proactive power to help ensure people do not radicalize, mobilize, recruit, or inspire others to commit acts of terrorism. It is a different form and complementary to military action, law enforcement, prosecution, and detention. Our approach is outlined in our national strategy for counterterrorism. The strategy states that the US will, quote and unquote, champion and institutionalize prevention and create a global prevention architecture with the help of civil society, private partners, and the technology industry. Let me also highlight the great work that we've been doing with different initiatives, starting with the Strong Cities Network. This is a network of 125 cities and supports local governments, finding local solutions to address the drivers of terrorist radicalization and recruitment in their communities. Overall, this brings together local government actors and mayors to discuss what they see in their environment, how they address it, and how this has been working. This network has a diverse set of cities and states across the globe. Among the 125, I can just name a few. Los Angeles, California is one of them, along with many, many others in the United States. The Australian state of Victoria, Mombasa, Kenya, Zamboanga, and Philippines. These are all just a few of the cities. Another important part of CVE includes empowering local voices to provide an alternative to the falsehoods propagated by terrorist recruiters. And CVE is also about rehabilitating former terrorists who can be rehabilitated and successfully reintegrating them into their communities. In Southeast Asia, as an ASEAN dialogue partner, we have been supporting the senior officials meeting on transnational crime working group on counterterrorism to implement the 2017 Manila Declaration to counter the rise of radicalization and violent extremism. Mainly our support through this has been through workshops and through working with various governments, looking at the implementation of the ASEAN Regional Action Plan, and also working bilaterally with other governments on potential ways to draw from this regional action plan and complement their national action plans, or to potentially develop new national action plans that are complementary to the regional action plan that the ASEAN members have endorsed. The Global Counterterrorism Forum, or the GCTF, is another initiative that I'd like to talk about. It conducts training and capacity building workshops and develops non-binding good practices on CVE through the CVE working group, which is co-chaired through Australia and Indonesia. This is a really good initiative with a website where you can go in and look at different toolkits on addressing the full life cycle of radicalization to violence. It lists out good practices, documents on addressing the challenge of returning families of foreign terrorist fighters, along with a lot of other good practices, like the role of youth, the role of education, the role of families in addressing the VE threat. They're broad recommendations. Again, they're not binding, but they're really good for different entities who are looking to do more CVE policy in their country or more CVE implementation in their country. They can draw from these larger, broader recommendations and apply them to their particular political context. You can go on the GCTF website and find those recommendations, and I highly recommend that you consider these non-binding documents as part of your prevention efforts. We also join other countries in supporting multilateral CVE efforts, such as the Global Community Engagement and Resilience Fund, or GCERF. GCERF is a multi-stakeholder global fund that works with local partners at the government and civil society level to strengthen community resilience to violent extremism. GCERF is a global initiative. It's funded by many donors, and currently we have GCERF also active in Southeast Asia. We're always looking to expand our partnerships in unique and creative ways. This panel is one of those ways, and we look forward to continuing the partnership with people on this panel and hopefully also with participants. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak here and to share a US perspective on terrorist threats. And I wish you luck in your deliberations and dialogue over the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. We're beginning to receive questions, but I'll keep them until we finish the first round of deliberations with the panelists, of course. Now we move on to our second speaker of the panel. Allow me to introduce her for a minute. She is Deputy Commissioner Norma binti Ishaq, who has served in the Royal Malaysia Police for 29 years. She started her career in 1991, serving as a desk officer for Far East in the External Intelligence Division of the Special Branch. After serving for 12 years in counter-espionage and counterintelligence works, she was transferred to Protective Security Division. She was deeply involved in a wide range of protection work in various capacities. Among them are physical protection of key infrastructure, VIP protection, border security, and travel control. She is also trained in nuclear security matters and participated in many of the engagement activities organized by the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA. In April 2016, she was transferred to the Counterterrorism Division as an Assistant Director, and subsequently in April 2020, she was promoted to a current position to lead the Counterterrorism Division. DCP Norma Ishaq has been actively involved in many forums and activities pertaining to counter-terrorism locally and abroad, beside planning and coordinating security operations against terrorism threat in Malaysia. So without further ado, I invite the CP Norma to deliver her remark.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Daniel. And Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good evening to Your Excellency, Ambassador, and distinguished guests, and also all the participants. Okay, I would like to start, my remarks by sharing one of the interesting challenges I have while working on city there is a high level of interest portrayed by Malaysian general public and also members of the media on the number of arrests we make. Even during one of the many city forums I have participated, even Sydney Jones, director of IPAC, asked me these questions. Puan Rama, why is it so quiet in Malaysia? This is pertaining to the decline in the number of arrests in Malaysia since beginning of 2020. In 2020, our division only arrested a total of 7 individuals. 6 were arrested in January. 3 of them have been charged. Another 3 we have to release unconditionally due to insufficient evidence. But in August, we have another arrest, 1 individual, and we managed to charge him in court. The issue was raised because almost certain they were making comparison of statistics for the past years. We started to arrest people in relation to Daesh starting from 2013, where we have 4 arrestees, and then 2015, 82, 2016, 119, 2017, 106. We have a peak in 2016, and then it started to decline. 2017 is 106, 2018, 85, 2019, 72, and finally 2020, only 7. So the truth is, COVID-19 came to Malaysia as blessing in disguise. Due to health security and pandemic prevention measures, daily movement and activities have been restricted. So this indirectly reduced the risk and flattened the curve of terrorism in Malaysia. Obviously, the number of arrests had also dropped significantly from 72 in 2019 to only 7 in 2020. However, it does not mean no arrest is no threat or no city work is going on. So there are reasons for the drop. COVID-19 had impacted everyone across the board and across social spectrum. This includes supporters and sympathizers of Daesh in Malaysia. However, the level of interest shown by Malaysians can be categorized as follows. For the general public, the news about the arrest could be entertaining and most welcome by them. They are waiting every day to see in the news. So they are, waiting for the news of arrest. And I believe for the media, maybe the news could be the selling point to increase readership and viewership. Meanwhile, from our monitoring of online chat, the supporters and sympathizers of Daesh, they too are longing for the news as it romanticizes their front page heroism. Whenever they were arrested in the past, they will be in the front page news. So I find this challenging because every time this question was asked, I have to explain from A to Z, to the public, to whoever asked me. However, I cannot blame them, the public, because they are not familiar of what we do behind the scene, the hard work of online and offline monitoring, the collecting, processing, and assessing all the information we receive, doing a lot of verifying with many times with many sources. So our action is guided by the threat equation. So I have to explain to them like this. The equation is as simple as the sum of, water is the sum of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. So we got H2O. You cannot have water if you only have either one. So you have to have 2 at once. So it is the same with threat. So threat is the sum of intention and capability at once. Based on that threat equation, we have to gauge our response from legal perspective. And then whether it should be an executive action or preventive action, or alternatively, rehabilitative action. Okay, since the threat is now considered manageable, our leadership, meaning my bosses, wanted to balance our approach to track from different angles. And one of them is to approach it from the CVE point of view. Action taken will be outside of the legal perimeter for the purpose of turning over yet to be radicalized individual as a better member of the society. Even on radicalized individual who always propagate but has no capability to turn intention into real threat will be identified and lured back into the mainstream society through rehabilitation process. Of course, this is easy said than done. That is why we need the whole of nation approach to embark further. So in terms of best practices and how, when we talk about best practices, for us, how best can you optimize the result of your action? Do you arrest a person to punish him or to rehabilitate him or turn him to a better person? What is the degree of his offense? You need to know that. Whether it commensurate with the sentence. Sometimes it happens out of ignorance, and you have to give them benefit of the doubt. If you arrest a person and the result is persistent retaliation and hatred coming from the family members and the community, what good will that bring in the long run? For example, the law is such, it said possession of items related to designated terrorist organization is an offense. If you have only one Daesh sticker, small sticker, actually you have committed an offense. So if we arrest a person for that kind of offense, we are going to face a lot of problem along the way with the community at large. We really have to think twice and be practical in our action. So we really urge the government or the Ministry of Home Affairs to implement and coordinate the National Action Plan on CVE using whole of nation approach. Frontliners such as teachers, community leaders, youth leaders, managers, supervisors, coaches, and etc. must be trained to detect indicators and pick up red flag for mobilization of violent extremism activities. So let's give these young men and women a second chance in life and only refer them to the police as the last resort. At the same time, the police can focus more time in policing online activities and those using covert platform to pursue and mobilize violent extremism activities. In this manner, we believe we as a community can multiply our coverage to a bigger segment of the society. So how can we relate this CVE and CT? So CVE and CT is two parts of the same coin. We believe CVE focus more in preventive work outside of the legal system, and CT, counterterrorism, is preventive work within the legal system. So for the stakeholders to work together, we want our Home Affairs Ministry to be the conduit to formalize interaction through meetings, forums, seminar, and at the same time, stakeholders are free to refer to each other directly. They can approach the police for any legal advice or to cross-check any background information of subject under their care. So the communication protocol must be set up in advance to ensure smooth flow of information, and secondly, to safeguard classified matters. Government stakeholders and civil societies are the majority members of this National Action Plan, and the police will remain the minority member until the case is transferred to the police for executive action where the rest of the tasks are carried out by the police. So that is my long, short remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, DCP Norma. I'm so happy to hear your, I think, positive views on the PCVE National Action Plan. In fact, I think perhaps we can, it's okay for us to share that we had the first or the preliminary meeting between IPSOM, ARI, UITM, as well as ISTAC in relation to this. So because of your, I think, very concise vision of the NAP, I think there's a lot that can be gained from further discussion, and it's something that we'll take up with you later on, and something I think we can discuss on this platform as well after we finish with the song. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Now we move on to some initial remarks from our third speaker, someone whom I know academically very well, Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi. Allow me to introduce him. He is a lecturer of political science at the Department of Human Sciences, Center for Foundation Studies, International Islamic University, Malaysia. He's also the co-principal researcher for the Extremism Analytical Research Unit at ISTAC IAUM. Besides lecturing, he's engaged extensively as an analyst and consultant with domestic and international agencies in the research and counter-terrorism activities. He is a panel member of the Special Rehabilitation Team set up by Ministry of Home Affairs and Royal Malaysia Police Counter-Terrorism Division. He's also the panel expert for the RMP Special Branch Division to provide analysis for the cases investigated under Security Officers Special Measure of 2012. Other than that, Ahmad is an expert witness to testify in Kuala Lumpur High Court and Kota Kinabalu High Court in numerous terrorism cases in Malaysia. Recently, he has been appointed as a consultant to the Institute of Youth Research Malaysia, or IRIS, Ministry of Youth and Sports, to develop profiles of youth involved in militancy. The report entitled Belia Extremis was published by IRIS in April 2019. He is also a consultant to the United Nations. So without further ado, let me allow Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi to have the microphone, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel, co-panelists, Barbara and DCP Norma, Prof. Zul, and distinguished participant, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you a good morning and good evening. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First and foremost, I would like to thank and congratulate the previous speaker panelists for a wonderful deliberation on the topic. And I would say that I would just continue from what they have said, especially the point left by DCP Norma. Well, actually, I also was wondering recently that we have seen the drop of cases in Malaysian context, that if previously, if we compare that we have less and lesser cases of arrests in Malaysia. Well, of course, I mean, raised a lot of question in many people's mind about what's going on in here, especially those people who are looking at this issue for quite some time, especially, for example, the foreign embassies and diplomats here in Kuala Lumpur. But I believe that the decision or the change of strategy at the E8 right now is a positive change because we have COVID-19, we have more urgent issues. I actually wrote a paper about this. I said that it is by disengaging media on the terrorism issue in this country recently, especially during COVID-19, is a very positive thing because it allows people to focus more on urgent issue rather than focusing on the terrorism issue, where DCP Norma mentioned about the terrorism issue becoming a kind of a selling point for the news agencies, and the people actually enjoy reading about themselves in there. And yes, I think it is a very good point. However, I would like to offer some observation about the state of violent extremism in this country during COVID-19. First of all, I would like to there are 4 points I would like to mention. The first point is the political instability that we experience in the past many months has been affecting this counterterrorism work in some ways. Um, the political instability, for example, the change of government, the sudden change of government, and some period of vacancies and uncertainties that Malaysia has experienced for quite some time recently. This kind of situation actually affect the way the city and PCVE things is conducted in this country. Because one thing is, it is very distracting for the civil servant and also the law enforcement agencies whenever we have unstable government. So, however, because of the commitment on the civil servant, we the ministry, for example, the Ministry of Home Affairs, and also the law enforcement like the E8 and the Royal Malaysia Police and the intelligence community in this country, because of their dedication and also the focus with the assistance from the international organization, for example, United Nation of Development Programs, UNODC, and also the embassies in Kuala Lumpur. This actually keep the spirit and motivation of the government servant or in the governments to work on this issue. So I would say that the political instability that we have before has directly or indirectly affect the way the city and the PCE works is done in this country. That's the first point. Second point, I also observed the political radicalization as a result of the political instability that happened in this country. I do not use this term actually. Radicalization is actually suggested by the former Malaysian detainees, well known is Yazid Sufaat, who I spoken to him and asked him what is your concern this day. He said that you don't have to worry about the terrorist radicalization. You should focus more on political radicalization right now, because I was politically radicalized first before I go to the terrorist radicalization. So he said that this element, this factor actually leads to this political radicalization things, the political discourse, which involve religious issue, racial issues, and then the political tension that happen inside the country leads to the radicalization of some people here. It starts with the political and it goes to violence. That is the second point. The third point, DCP Norma mentioned about the the continuous surveillance and also the monitoring. It is because of there is an attempt during the COVID-19 of the covert recruitment and radicalization. Why is this thing happen? Is because of the change of narrative. During COVID-19, the violent extremism narrative has changed, and the violent extremist group has exploited this COVID-19 pandemic to their advantage by saying that this pandemic is actually a punishment from God for those people who are not supporting our group. So it is very imperative for all of you to support us, because this is the proof that the coming of pandemic is actually very, very important for us to support them. So you see the exploitation of the narrative also contribute to this radicalization. And of course, there are some people being, involved in this, being influenced by this, but not reaching the level of serious advanced level of radicalization. And of course, with the extensive work done at the E8 right now, I do not deny that they have done a very good job in terms of monitoring for the past many years. I think that's the reason why we do not have a major attack in Malaysia. We managed to handle the issue, neutralize the threat from the very beginning. I think it's very, very wonderful job that they have done. And number four is the regional hotspot. I think regional situation also affecting us in some way. If you read the newspaper a few weeks ago, the release of Abu Bakar Bashir, it has caused a lot of concern in this region, and also the arrests of a few people related to Jama'ah Islamiyah, and also the talk about reactivation of Jama'ah Islamiyah in Indonesia. And of course, the long-standing issues in Mindanao, the southern Philippines, and we also have the problem of the Rohingya people being accused and involved in terrorism finally channeling the money, the fund to India in order to perform the attack in there, as been reported in the news. And we also have another concern that is in Myanmar itself and also Southern Thai. So I would say this hotspot even though the hotspot, I would say, is a very strong term, but I would say this is a very, very serious point that we have to look at. So this situation actually create a kind of unsafe situation, or can cause a great concern to Malaysia. And it would affect us in some way, because if you study the movement of this group or the people in the region, they always have regional networking. For example, Khatibah Nusantara group, who was formed in Syria, but they have a networking in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in the Philippines. If you look at the conversation of the militant group, for example, Wandi, he always have a networking in the region. So I used the term glorical is a term that I use to describe the nature of violent extremism in the region. I say that the violent extremism group in this region is locally created, regionally connected, and globally inspired. They always have, yes, they are created locally, but they have regional networking, they have regional connection, and they're globally inspired. So these three levels always present when we discuss about the violent extremism group in the region. Therefore, it is very imperative that we look at the region and we try to work out on that. So I think the research that we are trying to do in Sabah, for example, we're in collaboration between IIUM and also START at the University of Maryland. It is very, very important because we are looking at the 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 the, the exploitation of violent extremist group of the migration pattern in here in Sabah and also in the southern Philippines. So in conclusion, I would say if we are going to forecast or to foresee what's going on in the region in the next 5 to 10 years time, we have to look at the region, because what makes this regional vulnerable is because we have a long history of grievances. In this region, what makes this region vulnerable is because we have a long history of grievances, political grievances, religious grievances, ethnic grievances, and economic grievances. And of course, we have the second point, that is we also have takers in this region. Those people who are ready and ready to accept and try to promote and propagate this ideology. For example, Abu Bakar Ba'ashir. For example, I don't, even though the Indonesian government's decision to release him is a very commendable decision that they make. It is very timely because it is a rule of law. We will be seen as the government who respect the rule of law. But at the same time, I believe that the Indonesian government should engage with him, not only with the local scholars, but also international scholars, so that at least they can talk to us, not to others. So that's the principle. And so that is the 2 point. And I think that's we have to look into that, and we will have this effective national action plan if we include all this consideration. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ahmad. So there's a number of questions that are beginning to come in. So I'll go to the questions posed by the participants or the audience, virtual audience anyway, for the three speakers. Yeah? This first question is, I think, directed to all, which is with regards to whether the threat of lone wolf terrorists are the biggest threat to be faced by intelligence and security agencies in this region. So I open it up to the three panelists to respond.
Yes, of course. It's one of the biggest challenges in our work to identify lone wolf or lone actor, because they do connect with others, but not the intention. So they can just, the planning, everything is by themselves. But if we have people around him that can pick up the indicators, maybe they can, convey that to us. We have a case, back in about 2 years ago in Penang, where there is, someone who just go berserk and run amok with a bladed weapon and chop his supervisor at the factory there, just out of nowhere, So when we do this interview of the circle of friends that he has in the factories and at home and the near madrasah at his apartment, when we talk to them, they realize something. There is aha moment to them. They say, oh, that's why he's acting like this, he's acting like that. So but because they are not trained practitioners, they are just members of his community or his colleague or his roommate. But because they are not trained, they didn't pick up that indicators or red flag of this particular man have been radicalized and turn, become the lone actor in the end. So, but however, we cannot manage to retrieve anything from his mobile phone because it has been, he has make sure is damaged. We cannot retrieve anything from the handphone, so we cannot trace who his real contact is in his communication. So we believe he is someone who have been radicalized, become extremists, and don't really talk much to others. We even interviewed.
I think it was mentioned that the person had mental health issues. Is this true? Prior to his exposure to
not really, because he has never been referred to any mental health institution, or whether he don't even have the certificate of mental health. So, but the parents said they never realized anything strange about him. So when did he change? We didn't know. Only after the incident, after you go and talk to all those people in connection with him, you realize that he is showing indicators, but those in his environment didn't realize. I mean, we cannot blame them because they are not trained practitioners. So, but that's why we need to have all this CVE approach nationwide, so that those who are in charge of youth of a group of people like in factory, they must have at least a basic level of things so that they can always report to us, the police. Yeah, thank you. That's my remark. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara or Ahmad, would you like to add to those comments? Barbara, yes. Okay, you're muted. Okay, now.
Yep, unmuted now. No, I just wanted to echo Norma's comments. I don't know that the lone wolves are the biggest threat. I don't know that there's one big threat in violent extremism. But I think the danger with lone wolf actors is that there can be a multiplier effect. As we know, in Malaysia, that's the case. There are a lot of lone wolves, and one way that they gain interest is through social media, something that's very difficult to monitor. And they pull in different groups who are interested, and a lone wolf starts multiplying into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. So I think that's the big danger of lone wolf actors. And I think that it also is really important, as Norma mentioned, to think about this is an example of why prevention is really important. for any kind of CVE work, or any way to prevent or counter violent extremism. I think it's really important in the sense of working with families who see youth often and can monitor them, helping them recognize the drivers of violent extremism and if something looks unusual in the home, helping educators, helping community leaders, and programs that engage more with youth. Those are the kinds of prevention efforts that I think that some of the kinds of prevention efforts that I think we should be thinking about in these types of examples.
How would you see the lone wolf threat in the United States of America at the moment?
I'm not an expert on the domestic terrorism, so I probably shouldn't comment on that.
Okay.
But I would just say, you know, I'm seeing what you're seeing in the news.
I would like to add a little bit.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I would agree with Barbara. As mentioned about one lone wolf is going to grow bigger in number. Yes, number one is yes, I agree. One of the biggest challenge that we have is a lone wolf because it is very difficult to be detected because it's a one person. However, as the DCP Noma mentioned just now, lone wolf always leave behind signatures and indicators. Whether it is electronic indicators, whether it is physical indicators that we have, and somebody must notice that. If you look at the New Zealand shooter, for example, if you look at him and study about him and these agencies, the security agencies in New Zealand, for example, look at him and study closely, that he left behind a lot of clear indicators that he was actually intending to do something. But there is nothing being done on it, and he managed to do that. He put on the stockpile of weapon, and he put a lot of things online, and he communicated with all these people across the globe about the intention of doing that, and he did it. So meaning what? Meaning that he left behind a lot of indicators, a lot of signatures, a lot of sign that he was at the advanced stage of radicalization. That's number one. Number two, a lone wolf will grow to become pack of wolf. So it starts with the lone wolf, yes, but it will grow to be pack of wolf because they need support. So support system is very, very important in operation, in the terrorist operation. You cannot do this alone. You may do it, but usually it is not being done that way. I mean, in history, if you look at the situation here in Malaysia, we don't have such case about lone wolf of doing this alone. They always have a pack of wolf, right? And yeah, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay. Now suddenly there's a flood of questions, so it makes my job easier because I don't have to manufacture questions on my own. But suddenly there's a flood of questions. I'll have to go through them as much as I can. There's a question on current efforts to repatriate Malaysians from Syria. How is that developing in the COVID-19 age? Perhaps this is a question for DCP Norma.
Yeah. Okay. We have done our part. I cannot say this on behalf of the government, but I believe this is, I mean, unwritten anywhere. But we believe the government always, agreed with our suggestion to bring back or repatriate back our citizens over there in Syria to Malaysia, because if we repatriate them back, meaning is a control movement. We take them back and we will deal with them here in Malaysia instead of let them be there and they could escape from the prison, from wherever they are, and they can slip out from the conflict zone, get a new passport, forged passport or whatever with new identity, and slip by into Malaysia without us knowing it. So we prefer to repatriate them back. So, but right now it's quite difficult because of the situation that they are in right now. Most of them are now in the Al-Hol camp, and the men basically in Al-Hasakeh, we have about 56 of our citizens over there, but because most of them of the camp and the prison are controlled by Syrian Democratic Force, where our Malaysian government, I mean, we don't deal with this entity. I mean, diplomatically, we don't recognize them, so we are like stuck over there. After identifying 9 of our not citizen, we have citizen among of the 9, 2 ladies and 7 children, 9 altogether. But one of the lady is an Indonesian who married to Malaysian. The husband had died over there. So, but we are going to bring them back, but we are stuck at that level of negotiating because we cannot go further. So that is the current situation that we are facing. So the rest will be like, will be dealt with when the time comes. Okay. I cannot go further because we are stuck there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dispinoma. Ahmad, would you like to add to this?
No.
Okay. Okay, there's a question for Dr. Ahmad El-Mohammadi. In your view, what is attracting Malaysians now to join terrorist groups?
Attracting is the key word here. I think what attract them is, I think that in my work, in my experience of communicating with a lot of militant here in Malaysia, I do not conclude the factors that actually push them to join the terrorist group. I always go to see them with open mind and try to listen to them and try to ask them, tell me what make you decided to go and join this group. So from there that we can find out the reason why they want to go there. So that was the approach that I have taken. So my conclusion here is, one, people do something because of the multiple motivation, because of different motivation. Some people going there because of personal motivation, and some people going there because of attracting to join the caliphate, for example, in Syria. Some of them going there because of being influenced by certain ideology. So I would say that at least the three key factors here: psychological, because of the internal drive, because of what's going on in themselves psychologically. For example, the desire to change themselves to be a better person, and desire to be in a different environment, to change their life to be to the better. That's psychological in nature, I would say. The second one is because of the attracting to the narrative of, for example, being under the caliphates in there. So the existence of conflict outside the region is very important factors as well. Because as I said, what make this region vulnerable is, one, is because we have a long history of grievances. And number two, because of we have takers here. There are a certain group of people who are actually promoting this. And number three is the global event which is taking place outside Malaysia. We could be one of the attracting things too. And number three is ideological. It's because a certain belief, a certain discourse, certain belief system that they have. So these things push them to this direction. So that's my response to the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, here is a question that I'm addressing to, I think, both DCP Norma as well as Barbara. This question is, I think, referring back to the CVE and CT being both sides of the same coin. Yeah. So the question is something, I think I need to rephrase this. Can you provide details on how public information strategy is employed when giving first-time perpetrators a second chance? So I think this is the gray area between CVE and CT about perpetrators or those who have been radicalized. When do you decide to put them into the legal system, or when do you put them on an off-ramp program, for example? So would you like to respond to that? Do we have the mechanisms for this at the moment?
Let me respond on this question. prior to this, our executive action is all without the consideration of the CVE, meaning whenever they cross the red line, even for one stickers or one T-shirt with Daesh symbol there, that's it. You will be arrested and and all the process charged. Even if the sentence is only 2 years, 2.5 years from the date of arrest. So still, you don't give people a chance. Sometimes, some of these, perpetrators or offenders, they don't even know that it's wrong, but that is not for them to, defend themselves of innocent about the law. But we have to be fair to them. If the system doesn't, educate the society about what is wrong and what is right, when they do things, let's say like just for one sticker, you just arrest him and he go out from the prison with vengeance towards us. So now, that's why I said my boss and my leadership said, please study all angles. If we can, say that, that's why I said about the threat equation. If you have someone very active online, he or she always talk loud, propagating this and that, but he or she didn't have the capabilities, know nothing about weapon, know nothing about, but always talk. So those kind of people, they cannot materialize their intent into the real threat. They just talk but no action. So people like this, we can approach and try to bring them back. So meaning if that has been done, if we could rehabilitate him, he will not go into the legal system. There won't be a black spot in his history of his life. So we de-radicalize him outside of the legal system. So this is the process that our leadership wanted us to do. So it's a little bit more work for us, but we believe positively this could have a greater result, because in any maxim, prevention is better than cure. Thank you.
May
That's my
I add
comment.
a little bit, Dr. Daniel?
Okay, Ahmad and then Barbara. Yes, Ahmad.
I actually would like to add a little bit to DCP Norma mentioned just now. Okay, the situation is this. Whenever we have people, for example, I'm speaking from the expert, the witness point of view, because I went to court as well and see this thing happening in front of my eyes, and I have to testify. For example, in that case, a guy was found to be in possession of one banner belong to Daesh. If you refer to Malaysian law, you can be charged under penal code possession of terrorist material. All right. So you can charge the person, you can push, you can press charges against the person and bring this thing to court and bring all the witnesses and the evidence. The judge would say, yes, you have this thing, and then you'll be found guilty, even though you do not know that this material, for example, are illegal to be in your possession. But you also, at the same time, you can take alternative routes. That is, you do not know about this and you do not have any sign of advanced radicalization. Therefore, perhaps you have to go through this de-radicalization program for maybe for quite some times, like a month or 2 months. And you understand that there is a danger, there is a thing, there is a red cross there is a red line that you cannot cross, which is in possession of material according to Penal Code 130 terrorism. He understand it, and the guy was released. I think this is what happened in the Norma's the tenure as the counterterrorism chief. I think this is a new approach is taken now. Thank you.
Okay, Barbara.
I mean, I don't think I have too much more to add. I agree with the two previous speakers. Definitely, you know, we think of prevention as a distinct form, but complementary to law enforcement. We think of prevention in terms of trying to ensure that people do not like mobilize and radicalize to violent extremism. And I also agree with the comments on de-radicalization. I just want to add one other thought that comes to mind is when, assuming that they are prosecuted and do go to prison, I think it's really important to talk a little bit about like rehabilitation, like within the prisons where people can become further radicalized according to many studies. And we haven't seen like really strong, I would say, prison rehabilitation or de-radicalization programs, I would say, in many of the countries where I work. They're kind of, they're sort of halfway developed and don't give enough time to the people that are in the program to actually benefit from it long term. And I would say that that's the same also for when we have terrorists who leave the prisons and go back into their communities. We need to think about rehabilitation and reintegration in that sense for the individual and for communities. Again, that's another big gap that personally, I'm not a specific, Malaysia expert like our panelists here, but that's a gap that I'm seeing in Southeast Asia.
All right, thank you. Now there's two questions here. One I think is specifically for DCP Norma, and another question is something that I'll open to all three. What is the situation with regards to online recruitment for ISIS at the moment in relation to Malaysia or perhaps in other countries in the region? To your knowledge, DCP Norma.
We can see a very sharp decline during this COVID era, but we do have individuals still involving in online. One is propagating all these Daesh ideologies, and the other group is consuming Daesh ideologies. So we do have this, but I'm glad that because we do have Malaysian, but because we monitor groups like WhatsApp groups, Telegrams, less Malaysian, but more other national like Indonesia, because they share this. I mean, we can speak the same language, they can understand. So, but more towards Indonesian than Malaysian. So, through our own, collection of intel, we get to know that the Indonesian members of whatever groups, they said it's difficult for them to open up a group because Dancers 88 will always, detect them. So, like using Malaysian to become admin of a group, so that is better. They just join in. So, and they talk a lot. It's a a group that they chat almost every day online, talking about this, that, a lot of other things. So, but there is no imminent or real threat. It's more like talking and sharing and like propagating for the time being. But because we are monitoring, so we can always know when the balance tip to either way.
Okay, thank you, DCP Norma. The second part of the question is from the same person. Is with regards to the release of Abu Bakar Bashir, as Dr. Ahmad mentioned earlier. Would this have any impact on the reactivation of JI cells in Malaysia? Do you have any concerns with regards to this? I open this to all three.
So can I just answer first? All right.
Yes.
We do have a lot of ex-JI members, but they are all in contact with us, or the other way around, we are in contact with them all the time. So by constant monitoring, we know. I can say confidently the old GI has been rehabilitated, but the younger, the offspring of the former GI, they have no interest, really no interest in whatever their parents have gone through with GI. They are like modern generation, those youngsters, with handphone all the time. So we even once get a vetting request for one of the son of former GI members who wanted to join the police force to become a constable in the police force. So to that extent, we can see that they are no longer, they grew up with their father, but they are not interested with whatever the fathers have, the former ideology that the father have. So this is the situation. So whatever Abu Bakar Bashir will not have the influence in Malaysia if he has maybe a small percentage of those under our observation. But I confidently have the trust that they have they have thrown away all these GI ideologies among them. So for the time being, we let Abu Bakar Bashir out first, and we continue to monitor him, monitor his influence in Malaysia, not monitor him over there. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Discipline Norma. Ahmad, would you like to add to that?
No, sir.
Okay. Um, Now, this is an even more specific question. I think this was something that was alarming when it came out in the news. Um, I think maybe a month or a few months ago, but it has gone under the radar since the initial report. Now, this is the question. Is there any truth to the involvement of Rohingyas in Malaysia to the terror plan in India? Or was that a false flag? Obviously, this question is for
this is quite difficult to answer and quite sensitive to respond, because from the news, the Times of India, I guess, they mention the intelligence agency that intercepted financial transaction. So from that clause of sentence, intelligence information, you cannot go and prosecute anyone in the open court, because intelligence information is like hearsay. It's not hard evidence. And then because they mentioned about financial transaction, I immediately contacted our financial intelligence unit of the central bank. Have you ever flagged any of these transactions coming from Malaysia to India? On especially Mr. Zakir Naik. So they mentioned none. They checked many times after I pressured them. So no, the answer is no. Okay. And the news still mentioned they have arrested one person, Mr. Nasir, whoever, and it is through Hawala. When you talk about Hawala, it's difficult to prove in court. Hawala, there is no money, hard money transfer, no. It's only a contra business. Scribble in the notebook, that's it. How do you prove? Anybody can come to my Hawala, I'm a Hawala operator. How do you prove? Anybody can come and scribble on my notebook, So why are you using all this, the contents of the report that shows that you cannot prosecute anyone in court and yet blast it in the media? I don't know, but I just, read through and put it aside. Wait for 3 days, it quiet down. I will, if I want to ask, I will ask another 3 months. So what happened to the case? If they cannot answer, then I just don't give a damn.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
it.
you for that, this is Norma. Okay, question for Barbara now. What are the main reasons for increasing women radicalization? Even though they have perfect academic background, what's the psychology behind it? Can you offer your views on this? Radicalization of women despite being educated.
Well, I would actually really love to know that answer because that's something that we've been looking into ourselves. You know, we're seeing an uptick of, at least in Southeast Asia, we're seeing an uptick of women becoming more involved in violent extremism and at higher levels. But I don't have an answer as far as why, you know, why they're doing this. I imagine, you know, I would imagine if I had to guess, it has a lot to do with a lot of the other drivers that we see for, you know, people who become radicalized and recruit. Maybe for power, maybe for a sense of belonging, maybe for ideological reasons. I don't know. It's something that we've been looking into and trying to understand.
Okay, thank you. Now a question for Ahmad. Now this is the relationship between radicalization and acts of violence. What's the relationship between the two?
If we look at the history of violent extremism and terrorism in Malaysia in the past 30 years, we do have cases that political radicalization lead to terrorist action. If we look at what happened, KMM, for example, it's began with the political radicalization. They don't like the political system that we have here. They don't like what government is doing here in Malaysia, especially political system, the law, and the people who is running the country. But for them, is a secular, not so Islamic. So then it leads to, because uh, uh, political radicalization provides the input to the action. So ultimately, it will manifest. So that's why in my study in radicalization, I classify radicalization into 4 quadrants. It starts with the cognitive radicalization, because the person use uh, rational justification to accept violence. And second is emotive radicalization, because they use the element of emotion, the sense of anger, the sense of revenge, and to accept violence. And number 3 is a faith radicalization, because of the belief system. So when it comes to belief system, they believe that, okay, violence is acceptable as well. And they start quoting the religious texts and so on and so forth. And these 3 things, this cognitive, emotive, and faith radicalization is non-violent because it exists at the mental level and emotional level and at the faith level. But if it goes up to the action, it will go to the level of action, and it will manifest in the form of behavior in terms of the actual act of violence itself. So if you look at from that perspective, political radicalization is an escalation from cognitive, emotive, faith, and therefore become action. And of course, KMM is the best example for this. And Al-Ma'unah is another. Even Jamaah Islamiyah is, of course, has some political radicalization basis for that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Now, okay, this is a question from me. Before I forget, because this was something that was emailed to me by Professor Rector this morning, and it got me to have a think about the issue. Probably you've heard of this. Over the past few days, there have been some reports of a former Prime Minister of Malaysia whose name has been listed in top 20 extremists. I think it's in a website by Countering Extremism project or something like that. How fair is this inclusion of his name in the list? And what is the criteria that they go by? Now, having said this, this is my issue. the vocabulary of PCVE is something that can easily be, I think, appropriated by different groups, as far as I'm concerned. And it can be to the detriment of the image of a person. It can be questionable, the way that they use or appropriate these terms loosely. For example, calling somebody extremist, but at the same time having one of the criteria is with regards to how many percent that this person has contributed to in the killing of. So those kind of things. So what do you think of this inclusion of this former prime minister's name in the list of 20 dangerous extremists? What are the issues with regards to this? Ahmad, would you like to respond to this?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Dan. The inclusion of Mahathir in the list of the terrorists, in my view, is a reaction to what he has done for so many years. In my view, Mahathir, if you look at his remark, his rhetoric for the past 20 years since he became prime minister, and he stepped down and he became prime minister again, he consistently believed that the problem of the Jewish people as the cause for what's going on in this world, and he maintained that rhetoric until today. I respect his view, but I also believe that his statement is going to give a lot of impact to the Muslim people across the world. And I believe that it is, from the civilizational point of view, it is very uncalled for statement as a statesman, as an elderly at this age, making such kind of statement. And I actually hope that he come to his sense to speak more from the civilizational perspective. Because if you talk from the healing perspective, you can talk all the time. If you, for example, Jewish people in Israel right now, they want to take revenge against the Germans, they can do that too. If we talk about the people here in Malaya, we want to take revenge against Japanese Imperial Army, we can do that too. But what is the benefit of talking about it? So I believe that the statement is that he made for the past many years until today, it is uncalled for, and he should stop doing that. And one thing that I think it is very important for us to highlight is that because of this kind of narrative that he has propagated, our perception about the nation, which is called Jewish people, has been distorted. We regard the Jewish people as a non-human in that sense. Yeah, we know that the Jewish state has been persecuted the Palestinian for so many years, but to view Jewish people in such a way that he was describing, it is not civilizational at all, and he did not. I mean, it is not his level to talk something like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Ahmad. Would Barbara or okay, DCP Norma, please
Okay.
go ahead. Yeah.
I think from the counterterrorism practitioner point of view, whatever we do, we have to see things in a proper context and proper perspective. I think whatever knee-jerk response by Dr. Mahathir is something happened in France. I believe he's commenting on that issues, but he just didn't think twice before he opened up his mouth talking about this. But for us, when we want to judge something, we have to see it in the proper context. So that is from the practitioner point of view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here on the stage of Malaysia's national election plan on CVE. I think I can answer this quickly for the benefit of the questioner. Malaysia's NAP on CVE is we're just starting with preliminary meetings, and it's going to be a project that will probably take think until the end of the year actually. So inshallah by the end of the year is something that we can realize. Okay, there's a question here from from an Indonesian. What is Malaysia's policy on the one Indonesian who married Malaysian national and is now stuck in Syria? DCP Norma, would you like to
Okay.
respond to this?
Yes, there is a clause in our immigration rules, I guess. She can come back to Malaysia because she is a mother to Malaysian. So this Indonesian lady
Okay.
married to a Malaysian, and then this Malaysian man, died over there. So from this marriage, she got two kids. So that kids are Malaysians, and then she remarried and have another one more kid. So that 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 the third child, we cannot determine right now because we are here, they are there. We cannot determine the status, but she can come back here because she is mother to that two young kids, two Malaysian young kids. So there is a provision for a foreign mothers to be present together with the young Malaysian, but she has to go through all the process until she can request for permanent resident and later on maybe citizenship. So it's a long process, but there is a provision to let the mother of Malaysian to come back to be with the young children. Okay.
Okay, that's a very, very positive response. I think we are almost running out of time. So I try to bring it full circle with regards to the present and US and Malaysian relations in relation to CVE. How do you anticipate the policy of the new or the president-elect with regards to CVE in this region going into the future? Barbara, perhaps you can offer your views on this.
Sorry, do you mean in the United States, or do you mean the change in administration?
The changing administration, yeah.
We see there's always going to be violence for those of us who are working in CVE or countering violent extremism. I think we're probably going to be employed forever. And that's unfortunate in that regard. What we expect to see is a higher uptick in working on countering violent extremism in the new administration. We've been really, really involved in it over the past 4 years. I haven't seen it slow down, but I do think with the increase in violence that we're seeing across the globe, there will be an increase in work coming from the State Department. Yeah, that's kind of, that's where I see it right now.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. I think we're running out of time. I'm trying to keep. I'm trying to be respectful to everyone's time, the speakers, the guests, and so on. So I think with regards to the rest of the questions, there's been a number that we have not been able to respond to. We'll keep a record of these questions and we'll try to address them, I think, over the following 2 weeks in written format. So we'll, I think, advance them to the relevant speakers and see if we can get a response from you in relation to the questions not answered. Okay, with this, I extend my thanks to DCP Norma, to Barbara, as well as Ahmad for being on this special panel. And I also hope that all of you who are here tonight will continue to join the following sessions on the 13th, 14th, I think 19th, 21st, 26th, and 27th. So there's a lot of programs. So again, thank you very much to all speakers. And now I pass it back to our MC, Sukaina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Danielle, for this interesting panel. It was actually insightful to hear from different perspectives coming from the police, from a doctor who's an expert, and as well as from someone from outside Malaysia. As a person who comes from a region that is full of conflicts and gets a lot of questions to know about what's happening in Syria, what's happening in Yemen, about Al-Qaeda, about ISIS, as well as different forms of extremism. What can be said is that one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. There is always that kind of narrative that would be there, unless and until it's will be countered with another narrative that violence begets violence. And the more that we would have youth who are lost and they just want to do something, they want to make a change. The moment they see violence, they think by participating in a bigger group, they can make a positive change, not knowing what kind of harm that they will do to themselves as well to other communities. Hearing from Syrian friends whom have had family members who died because of ISIS, I could see the sorrow and I could see, what I wish that others who are intending to join any kind of form of violent extremism would hear that kind of narrative. It's very interesting to know and to see that we are working more on prevention than having hardcore approach to deal with violent extremism. As it said, prevention is always better than cure. And I hope that Malaysia would always be peaceful and to see more peace within the region and further cooperation. And one thing that was quite interesting is to hear one of the questions is like, why we have more women participating in radicalization. Well, what I can see is that Al-Qaeda had a complete different approach. Women were more passive, they were just simply wives, while ISIS has adopted women empowerment kind of an approach. There was a call for women to join to help in the healthcare. There were women called to be there as a glue of a new community, to be wives, bearer of children, as well as to play a stronger role. It was the first time for me actually to see women in, I've always wished for a women empowerment, but when it comes to radicalization, I was hoping always to see women more active in promoting peace, but not to join into radicalization. But what we see is that women empowerment is going everywhere. And it's one of the new norms that is happening within today's society. So I thank you all for the amazing and interesting discussion that happened within the panel. And what we hope is that we would see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. as well for the next session at 9 p.m. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our symposium. On behalf of the organizers, we would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to our guests for joining us today. And I would also like to thank the participants for your undivided attention. And we would like to apologize for any shortcomings from our side. Thank you very much, and we'll meet you tomorrow.